Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Leah Landrum Taylor, Assistant Director with our Office of Community Engagement with our wonderful Department of Economic Security. First and foremost, I really want to thank you all for getting on this Zoom today and being a part of this webinar as we have an opportunity to once again recognize the importance of our second chance and the success summit that we're doing here today. We really want to thank everybody who's going to be on as panelists today, as well as those who are here participating. And if you have any type of questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. We really want to hear what you have to say and any ideas, any information that you would like to share. It's very important to us. So without any further ado, I would like to have an opportunity to turn it over to our director for our Department of Economic Security. But one little bit before I give the screen over to him, and that is the fact that Director Michael Weishart was very, very instrumental in making sure that our department was a part of this initiative that moved in a direction to really help out a lot of lives and helping to create those opportunities for the Second Chance Centers that we were able to establish. He, as well as members of his team at that time, were absolutely incredible in moving forward with this and coming up with innovative ways to make sure that individuals who had gotten out had that chance to get job opportunities as well as other types of support services for them. So I just want to give that little background so that you know all the great things that, of course, our director has been doing, but for the many years that he's been a part of this department and very, very intricate in helping with so many different things. But this was one of the ones that he directly had a hand in. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Director Michael Weishart.
Thanks, Leah. Really appreciate the kind words. It definitely is and was and continues to be a collaborative effort with the Department of Corrections, all of the community partners that have been involved, and especially the job community, the participants, and the dedicated staff that spend every day changing lives in the workforce centers that we have inside of the prisons. So I really can't believe that it's been 5 years since Governor Ducey included in his State of the State his vision for a joint effort between our workforce team at DES and the needs that existed and the opportunities that existed at the Department of Corrections here in Arizona. It has been, in my opinion, one of the best collaborative projects in state government in my 21 years working for the state of Arizona. And I think it really typifies what can be achieved when agencies and community entities come together across a common goal. I know many of you are representing the employers as well as the nonprofit community partners, the local government community partners that have been so instrumental in the success of this program. And it has been an unmitigated success, despite the tumultuous years that we've gone through since the inception of the Second Chance Centers. We've done an amazing job at changing lives. There have been over 5,100 participants who have successfully completed the program, of which 3,200 were directly placed. The other 1,900 came out of the program with far more robust skills. And frankly, I think the one of the two things that causes folks who are justice involved to find a different path. In my opinion, those two things are, first and foremost, a loved one on the outside that is committed to helping that individual stay out of trouble. And then number two, hope. And I think really the hope for a better life, the opportunity for a better life has been instrumental in helping us really curb recidivism and help individuals change their own lives. It's been a tremendous endeavor. It has been, I think, one of the most near and dear, positive, outcomes of my professional career. Really appreciate every single individual that's contributed to this. We have so much more to do. We have so many more opportunities, but taking a minute to celebrate the accomplishments thus far, I think is an important step. So really appreciate everyone coming together this morning and looking forward to the dialogue. Thanks, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Director Weishart. And also a big thank you to Regina Weiler and April Jones, as they have been working tirelessly here in our department to make sure, again, as our director talked about, the collaboration and partnership, all the partners that are on this line today. We know that it was Regina and April that were directly contacting them, not myself or even the director did that. You guys were out there doing the good works to make sure that those that are continuing to work on this effort are flourishing. If you notice a little bit behind me in my virtual background, it's a little kind of wonky today, but there's a starfish behind me, and that is an important thing here within our department, that story of the starfish. And the Second Chance Centers reminds me of just that. So hopefully you all are familiar with that starfish story. I'd like to now turn it over to our MC and moderator for the day. And he's here again with us this year. We really appreciate you. You have a wonderful thing in common with me, and that's a last name. It's a powerful last name, Taylor. I like that. So that's Mr. Jeff Taylor. He's going to take it from here. Thank you so much again for joining us this year.
Well, thank you. First of all, Director Weishart and Senator Landrum Taylor, I miss you down at the legislature. I'm sure you don't miss the legislature, but we miss you. So it's always good to see you. And thank you both for opening the Second Chance Success Summit. Many of the people that are on the call today are in very challenging positions, and this is a day of celebration and to really honor the good works that are being done by people that are working with sometimes difficult populations, but it's always great to hear success stories. And our first success story is from one of our DES colleagues who serves in the Workforce Development Administration. She is here to humbly share her story of reentry and employment.
Each and every individual has value and worth. Even though that they may be incarcerated, we have to be able to see these individuals from a lens of compassion. Prior to my incarceration, I had lived a different lifestyle, was exposed to various things that were traumatic at a very young age. Growing up in a foster home and having to make choices that, instead of leading me to a path that would create success, it ultimately led to an addiction. I had experienced depressions, anxiety. I had anger. Most definitely I had anger. And the choices that I made has forever not just altered someone else's life, but mine as well. 18 years ago, it led to my incarceration. And I served 16 years. Just reliving that moment was a challenge. My experience with the Second Chance Center, I can actually say it was shy of a miracle. I was actually selected to be an administrative clerk for the Second Chance program. An administrative role at the Second Chance Center within a prison unit requires somebody not just the skills to be able to do the work, but to truly relate to those individuals. We were given the opportunity to go to various units and to be able to share why would somebody want to experience the Second Chance Center. The Second Chance Center taught me about how to create a resume, how to get connected to employers, how to do an interview, peer support. That was so important, and to support you in your endeavors to want a better life. I have to honestly admit that being there at Perryville changed my life. It gave me an opportunity to be able to get an education. I obtained my certification in workforce development as well as computer technology. It ended up leading to an opportunity with the state And that's where it began to just really start to flourish, and knowing that good days were ahead, most definitely. As a reentry employment counselor for DES, my role is to provide employment services for those who've been formerly incarcerated, to be able to aid them in their transition to be successful in the community. My experience allows me an opportunity to truly relate to my clients. I believe that it is imperative that they may know that there is hope, that they may know the resources that are available. And DES with Arizona at Work has given me that opportunity that I can use my life and the experience that I have to give back to the community and to each and every life that comes into my path, to be able to show that compassion and that true heart for humanity.
I just can't imagine, 16 years, serving time in Department of Corrections, and, somebody treated her like a human being and she has responded like a human being. And that's truly inspirational. So thank you, Carol, for sharing your story. And thank you to DES for giving her the opportunity of employment and successful reentry. Our next guest speaker was hired as a result of her participation in the Arizona Apprenticeship Program through the Family Involvement Center. In her role, she assists clients who are in similar situations to provide peer support to families. Now we have April Gonzalez.
My name is April Gonzalez. From 2010 to 2016, I was incarcerated in Perryville Prison due to addiction and crimes that I committed to support my addiction, and released in 2016. Had a little ups and downs since then, and as of right now, I'm back on track. I'm sober and working for FIC, Family Involvement Center. And what that is we help families who are navigating the child serving systems, such as DCS, juvenile justice, DDD, at schools. So in 2016, I was released, and I did good for about a year, and I relapsed and started an active addiction again. So my reentry really began in 2016. I was released. I was actually enrolled into SAGE counseling, and I did that for 3 months, which actually helped with meeting people and kind of acclimating back into society. Because after being in prison for about 5 years and coming back into society, you kind of have, you're socially awkward. And so going to SAGE and being in classes and counseling kind of helps you, reacclimate and, find jobs and meet other people who were in the same position you were. I saw the Family Involvement Center program that they would, pay for your schooling, pay for an internship, and the criteria was, past addiction, past DCS involvement, and, that was a light bulb in my head that I was like, I'm applying. So I applied for the cohort here at Family Involvement Center. I interned for the first year, school for the first year, and that they paid for, and I was hired on as an actual employee a year later, and here I am today, interning still, but considered an employee, helping families that, were in the same shoes that I was once in. I'd have to say my communication skills are a lot better. Like I said, from being released to prison, you lose your communication skills. Like, nobody's having productive conversations. You're getting out into this world that you were once confined to behind bars, and now you're in this whole world with all these choices and options and people that you're communicating with that, I've learned to communicate with my families that I help. Another skill that I feel like I've developed is just the fact that I'm, trustworthy, and people can depend on me now. Like the families that I support through my job, they actually depend on me, and it's weird coming from a place where, at one point in time, nobody could depend on me to, having a whole caseload of families that now depend on me. The thing that I'm most proud of right now on my journey is the fact that I'm helping other people who were once in my position. And my kids, my kids are my world, and the fact that I have a great relationship with my kids and I'm taking care of my kids and was able to get my kids back after being in prison is huge. And it definitely helps me with the work I'm doing now as a peer parent support partner, because these people are walking in the same shoes that I once did. So being able to relate to them and tell them my journey and tell them my struggles and my story, it kind of gives us a bond right there. My plans for the future are to graduate school. As of right now, I am continued my education, and I am about 6 credits away from graduating with my associates in social work. I didn't have that plan, and I didn't see myself going back to school because I always thought I was too old to go back to school. And nobody wants to start school at 34 years old, but I did it, and it's the best thing I've ever done, and it makes you feel so good about yourself, like the fact that you accomplished something and that you're continuing to strive for the better. So I never imagined I would be here today, because in prison, you feel like your life's over. You're just that number. You're an inmate. You're a felon. And there's so many stigmas and biases behind, felons, that I never thought I'd be here in a company working, with my own caseload of families, helping, because, like I said, nobody wants to hire a felon and nobody wants to take a chance. And that's the biggest obstacle. So the fact that Family Involvement Center was able to take a chance and hire me, I just want to do the best for the people that I'm helping and want to be the best person and just strive and continue to do better.
Well, congratulations to April for successfully navigating the justice system and moving herself beyond barriers, sometimes many barriers, not only of her past, but also some of the barriers that need to be overcome, once you are released. And there's one thing in April's story that really stuck out for me, is that addiction is very patient. And even though that she had gone through some relapses, she persevered. And now she's the woman that she is today and the mother that she is to her children. And now it's time to introduce our keynote speaker. He is a man that has been a mentor to me. I met Franz Beasley. We were in a parking lot in South Phoenix on a reentry type center. We were moving furniture. It was about 115 degrees out, and that's when I met Franz. And Franz and I have become good friends. I wish I could see him more. I mean, I haven't seen him much lately, but he is certainly a great example of really success and someone that I've looked up to for years. So Franz is an Arizona native and a dedicated leader in his community. And when it comes to reentry services, he really wrote the book on reentry. And here's Franz Beasley.
My name is Franz Beasley. I am a native of Phoenix. More specifically, I'm a native of South Phoenix. And I've only lived in 2 places, Phoenix, Arizona, and unfortunately the Arizona Department of Corrections in my life. But today I'm a proud father of 6 children. I work hard for my family. I've been fortunate to be the president and founder of a Phoenix-based nonprofit that helps other youth and adults transition after their release from prison and jail, and providing them the necessary resources to hopefully find stability in their lives as they build whatever success looks like for them. And just I'm a community advocate. I love working within my community and serving in my community and living through my faith today. My reentry journey, I've been to prison twice. So in 1994, I was arrested and actually taken into custody for the first time at the age of 19 for an armed robbery and a kidnapping. And at that time, you were dealing with a person that had, if there was a definition of what a criminal or a gangster was, that's what I was, and that's what I wanted to be. And didn't learn anything that first time in. I was in for 5 years. When I was released out of prison 4 years, 3 months later, it was pretty much I got out and I went right back to the same old behaviors because that's what I knew and that's what I wanted to be. A year later, I was back incarcerated again, literally a year later, and lost in trial and received 12 years. So my reentry journey actually began on what I would say September 11, 2001 and 9/11, when our country was attacked. And that's when the change, I feel like God used that day and everything that took place on that day more importantly, the fight back that America showed that day, the togetherness. It really humbled me. And I believe that day was the day that the real transformation began to take place, where I no longer wanted to be in prison. I no longer wanted to be associated with criminals, with gangsters. I didn't want to be any part of that life anymore, and I knew I had a lot of work to do. So that was my day, I believe, of when my reentry journey began, would be on that day, because the mentality changed at every level, and I began to do the work. And I still had 8 years left until 2009 to work and to research, to study, to figure out who I am and where I'm trying to go in life. And back then, they didn't have DES involved. They didn't have so many of the resources that are there now. And thank God they're there now. But it's just, you kind of had to figure it out on your own. The greatest thing upon my release was I had not planned on going back to Phoenix, Arizona. There were so many negative forces still out there within my family, old associates and people that just assumed I would be getting right back into crime again, and like clockwork. And I was going out of state to go and stay with friends, to start over in a place that no one knew me. And then I knew my parents were sick, both of them. My father was unfortunately dying from cancer, and my mother just came through an extremely serious surgery that was impacting her health. So I came home. And that in itself was probably the biggest challenge, was going right back into the snake pit, right back into the same old neighborhood where everyone could find me again. The only difference was that my mentality, I knew that I was changed. I knew that God had done a great work on me while I was inside. So that part didn't worry me about falling back into old behaviors or wanting to hang out with these guys. I didn't even, to be straight up, I didn't even want to know anybody, but I just was trying to stay focused on my parents. But I would say the greatest challenge was just being able to stay focused, even when you have negative forces sometimes coming around you again. That would be my largest challenge, I believe, was just needing to be comfortable saying no to people who had spent so much of my earlier life with me. I have a person or an organization that helped me find resources after my release. My parole officer at the time told me, why don't you check out Chicanos por la Causa? I didn't receive a ton of resources from Chicanos por la Causa. To be really upfront, I was pretty self-sufficient on my own. That's not saying they wouldn't have helped me. It's just in those areas, it's just, I was pretty self-driven. I like I said, I went and got my own car, went and found my job. So by the time I got to them, I took what they had to offer, and what they had to offer me was individuals like Eusebio Quesada. I always say his name because that was my first mentor, actually on this side of the gate where I was free. And he helped me in regards to just slowing things down. He knew I was a guy with a lot of ambition, and I wanted to get out there, and I wanted to change communities and change the world, and he was one that helped me to really remind me this is a marathon, not a sprint. Just take your time. That was probably one of the best services that I probably ever received. Was I built many very solid relationships that I still have with many of those people. I was released in 2009, and Eusebio and I are great friends. He helps me with other projects. He sat on my board of directors for years, and other people within Chicanos por la Causa that came alongside just as friends, as mentors. But yeah, and then I would say also Bill Montgomery, who was county attorney, former county attorney, now he's Justice Montgomery, of course. He became a mentor to me. Actually, I met him through a Chicanos por la Causa graduation, reentry graduation they asked me to speak at. And he was speaking there also. And I was fascinated that the county attorney sitting here with no, room full of formerly incarcerated people. And, he's probably the only white face in the room. He's just standing there, giving this speech and talking about, he's looking for opportunities. He'll mentor, he'll volunteer in different ways. And I contacted him. Those two men were the two people that became immediate mentors to me. And both of those happened through my connections with Chicanos por la Causa. So Easy Common Ground came into be in May of 2010, not long after my release. 3 of us in prison that we used to sit down, and I had talked to them very much about what's going on now, just the different things that were impacting the inmate population and what was being done to address it. And I didn't know anything about nonprofits and all that, but I just saw over and over and over again individuals that they were ill prepared. I wanted to put together something where we could address those type of needs. And I didn't even know what the full spectrum of that was. I just knew that we started having our meetings in prison. And then we just took it. And of course, I started the learning curve once I got out, learning from different people from the Department of Corrections, from adult probation, just trying to understand what it was that they were looking at, and maybe we could be of support. And so AZ Common Ground was kind of birthed out of that. And so we see about 200 new contacts each month today. Most of those people are just looking for new job leads or looking for housing resources, bus passes, work clothes. And also we provide programming. I mean, all types of programming, from more evidence-based curriculums and so forth, that we can work with, more cognitive behavioral therapy and so forth, on into simpler programs like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We try to provide everything, but the real key to what our organization does outside of the resources and trying to meet people's needs, their immediate needs, it's our mentors. I have a strong volunteer army, that's what I call them. I mean, we could not do what we do without those volunteers that give of themselves to meet with my people meet with those that are in our programs week to week, and just showing up when we need them to be there, dropping off supplies at 11 o'clock at night for people who need to go to work tomorrow morning, and they would not be able to keep that job if they didn't have a pair of work boots. And I just have people, they pay out of their own pockets, they buy them boots, they buy them work clothes, they give them bus pass. I mean, I cannot say it enough. Without our volunteers, we couldn't do 10% of what we're currently doing now. But at the end of the day, our focus has always been to try to slow down the process with people that we're working with, help them to understand that we want to build a community of support around them so that they know they're not just going through life by themselves. My focus has always been more medium and high risk individuals. Not that I exclude low risk, but medium and high risk individuals is really who I'm looking for, especially if they have more of a profile like what I used to have and what the type of lifestyle I used to be in, where I feel that individuals are actually being victimized, where someone could actually be harmed. And I feel like the work that we do actually reduces victimization. So, and which is really the key to why I do what we do at AZ Common Ground. I always like to say to people, if a guy like me can do it, anybody can. And I mean that in all seriousness. If I can do this, literally anyone can. And so, I guess that would be my only advice, is that you have to be able to look at yourself in that mirror and make the decision, the determination that my life is worth it, and it's worth changing. It's worth doing the hard work of trying to figure out what's next for me, because it's not about what happened, it's about what happens next. And that's what I live on every single day. I can't pay attention to all the millions of things I did wrong, but I can focus every day on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things I can do right today, and make sure that those are significant moves for someone else. So I hope that helps. As long as there's hope, there's always an opportunity for them to change. You know, that 4-letter word is what changed my life. The idea that I can have hope, that there's a future on the other side of all this, wherever they're at in their process, wherever they're at in their incarceration. The best part about living this life is that I have an opportunity to serve. And sometimes you forget that there are so many no's that are going to happen now that you've been in trouble with the law, and now your social security number is completely scratched up and tainted. There's one thing that no one has ever said no to me on. I can serve. I can serve anytime I want. Nobody has ever stopped me from serving someone. It's an unbelievable message that God gave me one day. You serve. That's what you're here to do. And that's where my life began. I absolutely look for opportunities to serve every day. And my life has never been the same since. Serving my family, serving my community, and absolutely serving my children. So at the end of the day, that would be my message for them.
You know, once again, a very inspirational story. And, you know, when Franz talks about, you know, that his life is worth it, if you attend any of the programs that Common Ground has, is that he makes everybody in the room feel like their life is worth it. So he is certainly paying that forward. And as we hear all the stories being shared today, listen for common themes. You know, Franz and Arizona Common Ground are making success possible for those who have been recently released. In South Phoenix, as you heard him say, he deals with medium and high risk individuals. once again, a very tough population. So I just have a short story about Franz and how, he really thinks outside of the box. So back when Sheriff Arpaio was doing immigration sweeps in businesses around town, is that business then was left without a workforce oftentimes. So Franz would see that on the news and he would go to the business immediately and say, hey, I've got people that are willing to work right now. And he was able to get people employed that were, that had challenging pasts and were criminally justice involved. And, is that, that kind of pathway is the way Franz thinks. He thinks outside of the box. So we have some wonderful panelists joining us today. And each of them is so gracious to take time out of their very busy schedules to celebrate and commemorate Second Chance Month. So our first panelist is Paul O'Connell from the Arizona Department of Corrections. And Paul, if you could just take a moment and introduce yourself, and then I've got a question for you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul O'Connell. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Corrections for the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation and Reentry. And I'm very happy to be here and amongst some friends, and be happy to tell you about what we're doing in the role of community supervision.
Thank you, Paul. So what can inmates who are reentering do immediately after returning to the community, as well as in the long term to facilitate successful reentry?
Sure. Thanks for that question. I had some time to think about that question. And my immediate thought is that people just need to take a deep breath when they come out of supervision. Their anxiety levels are through the roof. There is a sense of fear of the unknown when they come out. And they just need to relax and get a sense of where they're going and how they're going to be getting there. So that fear is real. I see that fear every day when I come to work and walk through my lobby. It's the anxiety of, what do I do today? How do I get my appointments scheduled? What is my parole officer going to say about me? And the fear of that is not getting those things done, and the eventuality of people returning back to custody. That's real. And again, I see it every day. So what we're trying to do to minimize that is we're starting community supervision while they're incarcerated. We are reaching in to the institutions 60 days out. We are sending welcome back letters to those individuals who are coming back within those 60 days. We are having what we call meet and greets with the supervising officer to not dwell on what supervision is, but to talk about some of the expectations that we have, talk about the goals of where people want to be at when they come out of supervision, and just to have that conversation with them to try and reduce those anxieties. Once they do return to the community, we purposefully do not see them immediately upon release, unless you're a certain group of populations, like certain sex offenders, for example, seriously mentally ill, and the homeless population. They are released to our doors the day of release. But for the general population coming out, we usually see them a week after their release. And the reason for that is, when they were coming to us immediately upon release, and we were going over our expectations, making them sign our conditions of supervision, they really mentally weren't there. They were thinking about what's my next meal going to be? Which restaurant am I going to go at? How is my family going to treat me when I come back to their homes? So those interviews that we've had with them was just an exercise in signing forms. So when they're made the decision to meet with them a week later, it was to give them time to take that breath, to get a lay of the land, to see what they have to do, and giving them kind of a path forward. So when they come to us the week later, the routine is we administer our risk assessment or risk needs assessment. And what that assessment does is to determine a level of risk in the community. And that determines contact standards of how often we would need to be seeing them in the community. And then on the needs side is what areas of help do these individuals need, whether it's continuing on a substance abuse program, whether it's an education program, whether it's going into pro-social activities. And then from that, the supervising officer generates the case plan that will take that individual to the end of their supervision. They also, within that week or two of release, is we send them, and it's mandated, that we send them to a community corrections orientation. And what happens in those orientations is that officers tell them a little bit about what to expect while under supervision. And our message at that time is, we are here to help. We're not here to send you back. We are here to be your partner through this journey called community supervision. And then we reinforce that by having community providers on site. People like Access with their targeted investment program for medical services. We have Arizona at Work, who's been a great partner with us in telling them about the opportunities of finding employment and not waiting months to be employed, but having a job the next day after their meetings. We have peer mentors who come in. People have been served on supervision and who have made a success of themselves. And what they do is they tell their story. And oftentimes it's motivational. They couch it in such a way that there is hope. There is an opportunity to be successful if you surround yourselves with the right people, the right support groups, and be honest with individuals, that the officers, and asking questions for help. A lot of times people come and are embarrassed to ask for help, but the people that we have in these orientations are there to help. That's the main goal. That's what they want to do. And we hook them up with those individuals. So the orientations are very important. In terms of the partnerships, I mentioned Access, who's been a great help and a great partner, working with our homeless populations, and also on the medical and behavioral services piece of that. Arizona at Work, again, for the employment piece. Our community service partners come in and help them with their placements and other services. Peer mentorship, for example, is relatively new, I think, in the community corrections world. They've been there's an effort now to train people who are once justice involved to support those that are coming out. The Department of Corrections has actually hired some of those individuals, and they are phenomenal support systems for people involved on supervision.
So Paul, I want to just interrupt you for a moment. And I wanted to let the people know that are attending today that when Paul came into, really directing reentry, about half of the people that our courts that were sending to Department of Corrections, they had already been there before. And Paul has been able to reduce recidivism by community supervision and the partnerships that he just mentioned. Also the orientation class, which I have attended. And not only do they have people telling their stories there, but they also have many service providers in the room for those people that don't have jobs and that they have good direction and guidance. So Paul, job well done. I'm a big fan, and keep up the good work, my friend.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. So in terms of long-term ideas to help them facilitate to be more successful, people need to surround themselves with support groups, people who are positive. You know, if you hang out with an old friend who you get high with, that person is not your friend. So find some positivity in your life. Be honest with your supervising officer, because there's a trust there. And then finally, don't run. It's hard to help individuals if they're avoiding supervision, and because once they're brought back into custody, there's nothing we can do for them at that time. And by following these rules, what we've seen is a higher percentage of success rates on community supervision. We're up to 75% on any given month. And that is a large increase from when I first came to the department about 10 years ago. So if people follow those things, taking a deep breath, trusting your officer, follow the plan, you can be on a positive trajectory for success and a hopeful future. So
Thank you, Paul, very much. And
Right.
just to remind everybody that since recidivism equals victimization and further crime, through the efforts at Department of Corrections and Paul, we have a safer community. So thank you again. So now we'll move on to Shonda Breed from Arizona Supreme Court. If you could introduce yourself, Shonda, and then I have a question for you also.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Shonda Breed, and I work with the Arizona Supreme Court under the Administrative Office of the Courts, and I'm the Director of Adult Probation Services here.
Thank you, Shonda. And what role can probation play to help individuals have a successful transition back into the community?
Sure. I think first and foremost, I just love all the stories that we just heard. I would say, the most important role that we have in this juncture is to listen to those folks who have been involved in the justice system, to listen to those folks in the community, those working with these folks, and to really use this time to reform, to assess, to review our internal policies and our organizational system. A couple examples of that. We have something that we've done, and we got together about 5 years ago with my successor and several others, Paul O'Connell, DOC, federal probation, community-based organizations, church-based organizations, DES, tribal organizations. We got together and we said, how do we do things differently? How do we look inside in our own internal organizations and do things better? Because what we're doing now is not working. And we were gifted a training called the reentry simulation training. And so together we started to do that. And we became each other's support. And we started to strategize and talk about how we wanted to do things differently within our systems. But this reentry simulation is so powerful, impactful. And what it is it's a month in the life of someone who was just recently incarcerated, now released, and on some type of community supervision, so probation, parole. And what we found is that when we all went through the training, and as we train everybody else, is that community supervision is really, really difficult to complete. And so from that, and also bringing to the table the justice involved folks that verified it and said, yes, this is all true. It's really, really hard. But we looked inside, especially probation, and we said, what barriers are we creating? We looked at our terms and conditions of probation, for instance. We looked at our data. We looked at the feedback that we were hearing from reentry simulations. And some of our data said that, most of the revocations that were going back to prison were on technical violations. Those are the rules that we've created, not new felony offenses, but the rules of just being on probation, right? So we took a hard look at that. We invited some research partners, and we have been working on condensing those terms and conditions of probation. They were just passed to be utilized just about 2 weeks ago. So we're very excited about that. They're going to go from 22 standard terms and conditions of probation to 9. So we've taken away some of those ticky-tack fouls, so to speak. And we focused on the behavior of those justice-involved folks, and trying to push them in the right direction of the effort and the participation of probation, rather than one of the terms currently is, I will not use drugs and alcohol, right? But we all know that's part of recovery and part of the process. So why are we sending folks to prison on a technical violation such as that? So some of those changes, again, just a time to review, assess, reform in our systems. We have reduced recidivism by about 32% since 2008. And just very, very proud of that. But we have to continue. It just can't stop here. We have to do more. We have to have these justice-involved folks at the table so we can really listen. And we have to make sure that we're bringing the right people on as probation officers and probation staff, and make sure that we're trained appropriately. Even as I'm listening to Paul O'Connell speak and myself today, we have changed our language so much. We're talking about things like trust and don't abscond, we're here for you. And, we've developed a reentry program statewide, and we've now changed our policy so that probation officers have to reach in 90 days prior to release to establish a release plan so that they can help this person not fall through the cracks when they're released. And then as well, up to 6 months after release, we're telling probation officers, it's in our policy, you don't have to focus on the terms and conditions of probation. For the first 6 months, focus on the critical needs. Let's talk about where they're going to lay their head at night. Let's talk about if they have anything to eat. Let's talk about how they're going to stabilize, how to put them, with a great foundation moving forward so they're set up for success. So again, a lot of this moment, let's look inside internally what we can do to stretch the red tape and make some changes.
Shonda, thank you so much. And I really appreciate what you were talking about on the technical violations, on really reducing, which is not a new crime, but engaging with that individual to keep them on the beam. Oftentimes it is to do with the relapse, and rather than to punish someone, to keep working with them. And as Paul O'Connell said, people that don't run, that stay engaged, they are the ones that really, benefit. And that's a whole change from 2009, when maybe a positive drug test or two would send you, back to being incarcerated. So thank you for your good work, Shonda.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our panel, we have Jana Scott. And Jana and I go way back, and we share a common faith. And again, Jana is a great example to me on really how to live life, and not only just to talk about, how you act, in your faith, but also how you behave in the community. So Jana, if you could just introduce yourself, and I understand you have a PowerPoint.
Yes, thank you so much, Jeff. And also just want to thank the director and former Senator Leah Landrum Taylor, and shout out to Regina and April as well. Just so honored to be on this call today, and just briefly wanted to share some of the things that are happening with Central Arizona Shelter Services, and also the African American Christian Clergy Coalition as it relates to reentry. Next slide, please. First and foremost, I want to say that without addressing the feeder systems that end up with people having to spend time in jail and then reenter into our society, we will never fully address the problems of reentry. Feeder systems like an unjust criminal justice system where you have disproportionate representation of African American men in particular. The school to prison pipeline, where prisons are being planned for based on the behavior of young fourth graders. The fact that people who are incarcerated and who have children at home, and the generational impact of incarcerating a parent on the potential for that child to also end up incarcerated when they become an adult. And then unfortunately, we also see an impact in the foster care system, where youth placed in group homes are 2.5 times more likely to get involved in the justice system. And according to one set of data, 90% of youth with 5 or more foster care placements will enter the justice system. And we know that African-American children in particular are very much impacted by that. Next slide, please. So with CAS, as well as the African-American faith community, we have been establishing some partnerships with some groups who are longstanding, some who are relatively new in this faith-based reentry realm. And in doing that, we've been able to provide not only support, but also words of encouragement and really helping people to re-establish their lives. Groups like House That Love Built, which is a home for formerly incarcerated women, Hope's Crossing, which is a program that works with women coming out of prison in a 7-week program to build back their spirit. Prison Fellowship, who you're all familiar with, alongside Ministries, who really does walk out the important aspect of coming alongside people. When the gentleman talked about people who surround you and your friends, alongside has been doing this for years, coming alongside people coming out of prison to provide them with support and hope. Hustle Phoenix, that has been helping young people, particularly who come out of prison, to establish their entrepreneurial skills, which many of them have going in, but for whatever reason, they had not been able to leverage them in a way that was legal in our society. Teen Challenge, who of course, everybody knows about the 50+ years of Teen Challenge's experience, with about a 90% success rate in helping young men and women turn their lives around. And then of course, working with many of our local churches. I just wanted to show a couple of the successes that we've had. One is providing support for skill building efforts with the House That Love Built. We did a Laptop for Ladies event that a lot of the ladies were trying to get jobs. They were trying to do things to just continue to rebuild their lives after incarceration. And they told us, you know, we really can't even do a resume because we need to have access to computers, and the house did not have that. So we were able, through some funding, to get each lady in that house a laptop. And you can see the happiness on the various ladies' faces to be able to move in technology, which is something so important for people coming out. Next slide is a video, and then we're almost done. I want to share the story, next slide please, of Quentin Moore. And he'll share his own story, but he spent time in prison. As you can see, he was in there for drugs. He had been shot 6 times. He did his time. Now hear his story of redemption.
Quentin Moore, 32 years old, be 33 this year. I was incarcerated 2010 to 2014. I had got out in 2013. They sent me back. I was out for 3 weeks. They sent me back, and then I got out again in 2014, and I haven't been back since. I haven't looked back. I've been in the church heavy. Changed my life fully. I started my own business called More Prints for Less, LLC. I'm now a supervisor at a warehouse. I do that full time. I do the hiring and the firing. I also do the payroll. I just bought a house. I bought a 5-bedroom house. Little old me, a felon, whose life was just down the drain. I got out, man, changed it, man, and I bought a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house for my kids, all 7 of them. I have 7 kids, man. They getting straight A's. You know, I got a nice car, and to God be the glory. You know, to God be the glory. There is a chance out here for you. It definitely is. Peace.
So as you heard Quentin, he went in 2004 when he was about 20 some years old. And what we have to realize that many young men are getting caught up in this system, some because of the feeder issues that we deal with in our society, others because of life choices. But what we as people in faith and community want everyone to understand is that we are tripartite individuals. We are mind, we are body, but we are also spirit. And in order for someone to really come into a place of redemption, we have to engage them in that spiritual growth. And that's something that I am just so blessed to be part of. We at CAS actually are looking to hire people who have come out, and any of you that have people that are looking for a position, you know, after COVID, everybody is being called to do business differently. And we believe that through peer mentoring, peer support, people like Quentin, although he has a job, but people who've really come out and are seeking or have sought to reestablish their lives can hopefully help many of the people who came to CAS. And we have about 40% who came to CAS directly out of the prison. So much of the homelessness that we're seeing are people who have had records, and we've got to get behind them with this. What faith communities can do is be in touch so we can engage you in this effort. There are so many people that need assistance, and we want to be sure that you're there to do it. So the last slide, and I'll end with this. Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them. It comes from Hebrews 13:3. Don't wait till they get out. Like the man said, they're going in 90, 60 days ahead of time. Let's go in even earlier than that and help people come back to being productive, responsible, God-fearing, God-loving citizens in our society. Thank you.
Jana, thank you so much for your presentation, and also for Quentin. What a, I mean, that's like, if you're in this business, that's like getting a paycheck listening to Quentin. So thank you for your good works. Also in the chat, Stephanie Golden from Pinal County, the Pinal County Reentry Project, went through the reentry simulation and highly recommends it. I recommend it to anybody on this webinar today. It's really eye-opening. And with that, we're going to move on to our final panelist. And today we have Tim Tucker, DES Reentry. Tim, if you could introduce yourself, and then I've got a question for you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Tim Tucker, Deputy Administrator with Workforce Development Administration within DES. And reentry is one of our programs that we oversee.
Okay, Tim, so what kinds of supports and services do individuals reentering the community need to sustain workforce participation and avoid recidivism?
Great question, Jeff. There are many types of supports that contribute to success of an individual releasing or recently released from prison. Gainful employment has proven to be instrumental in reducing recidivism after incarceration. It's certainly not the end-all be-all, but it's very important. So we, to provide employment support, we provide under the Arizona Work Identifier. We have broken our reentry program into two different areas. One, prison-based reentry services. That's we provide services to those individuals inside prison. The second part is community-based reentry services, where we provide services to those individuals outside. We definitely feel there's a need for all the areas. That's why we kind of revamped our program to make sure that we're touching on all those areas. Our first prison-based reentry services, Director Weishart, to start off, talked about the Second Chance Centers. We're in 3 different locations within Department of Correction, Rehabilitation, Reentry. And he highlighted the great partnership that we have with Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and Reentry. And the success of that program really is the partnership between both entities. The Second Chance Centers provide 8 weeks of workforce and educational program tailored to equip Arizonans' reentry population for success after incarceration. The programming is effective in reducing recidivism and improving job readiness by matching former inmates to sustainable employment and community resources and support to help them secure tools that need to achieve self-sufficiency. The program participants develop both soft and hard skills to boost their employability. We find that their confidence often improves, giving them the determination they need to be successful in their community. Part of with COVID, our second chance centers were put on pause. With that, the teams collectively had to really think outside the box. How can we provide services to these individuals who need it? That's where the teams came together and built a new program called Resource, Employment, and Development, the RED program. The RED program was developed to continue to assist incarcerated individuals. This has expanded our reach as an agency in collaboration with ADC R&R to provide employment services to our incarcerated clients in a virtual manner. In addition, it allows community stakeholders who are unable to enter our state institutions additional option for them to provide services to our clients. We work with those clients 30 to 45 days from the gate and provide them the resources for them to be successful. I'll touch on the community-based reentry services as well. Mr. O'Connell had mentioned about Arizona at Work being at his location, and that has also been a strong partnership. We are located physically in Phoenix, Mesa, and Tucson parole offices, Pima Reentry Center, and Maricopa Reentry Center. And we also have a connectivity to the 8 additional remote parole offices across the state. That way we can provide service to all of those individuals who are on parole. We also have, out in our community-based reentry service, we have a location at Native Health in Phoenix. That office allows those individuals who are not on parole to be able to go to a place to serve our clients. As our prison-based reentry services, our community-based reentry services also focus on improving job readiness by matching former inmates to sustainable employment and community resources. Our goal is to serve 50% of those individuals getting released from Department of Corrections facilities, with anticipation of being able to serve more as we move forward into next fiscal year. And we will do that by expanding our services within Department of Corrections, and also we'll be identifying other opportunities in the community where we can partner with other entities to serve those recently released. As Shanda, from the Arizona Supreme Court, we had a brief discussion around probation. Maybe there's an option for us to provide services to those individuals on probation. So we definitely want to make sure that we're touching these individuals in all aspects, and nobody gets missed because we're not able to provide the services, or at least steer them in the right direction to provide services. And I'll end with a couple little data points. Director Weishart had mentioned the Second Chance Centers. We had 5,100 participants, 3,279 obtained employments. But I'll touch on a few other data points that I think are really important, just to touch on how we're providing services to those individuals. With that RED program, which started in July 2020, we've served 1,152 clients. In our community-based reentry centers, which is the parole offices, since we started providing services there, which was around 5 years as well, we have served 10,445 parolees, with 54% of them having employment. So we're definitely looking for ways to serve those individuals, whether it's inside or outside, and we also want to add one tool that community agencies, employers can have is federal bonding. We have federal bonds that are available to employers who hire anyone who is justice involved. We actually have probably 800 federal bonds that are available to employers, that if an employer is on the fence whether to hire this individual or not, this bond could provide $5,000 to $25,000 of coverage up to 6 months to ensure if something may happen.
Thank you so much, Tim. And just one thing that really kind of stood out in your presentation is the work that you do inside the prison and getting people prepared. People, once again, with addictions, that clock kind of starts ticking in their minds on that release date. And what you're able to do is kind of reconfigure that thought process towards positive pathways once they are released on that day that they're released. So thank you for your good work, Tim. And really great panel discussion from all of our panel members. Now, moving on, an arrest or conviction record can significantly impact the ability to get a job. Second chance employers assist in reentry by providing opportunities to those who are ready to engage in the workforce and contribute back to their communities. So we have Robert Demeter from DES Employment Engagement Administration is joining us this afternoon to highlight a few of those employers. And welcome, Robert.
My name is Robert Demeter, Reentry Employer Coordinator for the Employer Engagement Administration. The Workforce Reentry Program for Arizona inmates leaving prison was initiated to help those individuals break the cycle of incarceration and provide them with a path to employment and self-sufficiency. Using this unique pipeline of job-ready individuals who complete our integrated workforce program is a great opportunity for employers to fill open positions with dependable workers. Here are a couple of videos from employers who are giving second chances to Arizonans.
I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities we provide for second chance employees here. We have several people in our upper management positions out in the field who came to us fresh out of prison or fresh out of a halfway house. And the thing that we gave them was an opportunity to grow and earn and get trained. I mean, some of the best people we currently have in the organization came out of the Second Chance program, and when they came to us, they were in a place where they were really ready to make a significant shift in their lives, in their behavior, and in the trajectory of their future. I would love to thank DES and Second Chance for providing this opportunity for us, because as an employer, like I said, we have found some of our best employees who have been with us for 10, 15 years from that program. It's a remarkable opportunity, and we're fortunate to be partnered with DES and Second Chance.
Hi, my name is Joe Urbank. I'm the General Sales Manager at Specialty Graphics Incorporated. We've been in business for 31 years, and we've worked with the Maricopa County Adult Probation Department along with the prison system in Arizona for that length of time. And we've been very grateful to have the opportunities and the employees that we've had come through our doors. We're also very grateful for the Second Chance program that started 5 years ago and all the opportunities that has brought us as well. We'd like to thank everyone in the Second Chance program and everyone who has been involved in it.
Okay, I'd like to thank Robert for those highlights and also for arranging, the different employers that are on there, one of many that are available in the community, and it's a list that is growing. Turning our discussion to adult probation, I would like to introduce Sarah Douthit. Welcome, Sarah. Please introduce yourself and share with us the transformation of Coconino County probation and the way it has changed outcomes for those seeking a second chance.
I would be glad to, Jeff. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of the wonderful stories. You talked about it being like a paycheck. It sure is. Listening to Carol and Franz and Quentin and April is just heartwarming and really highlights, I think, the successes of our shift. And so I'll tell you, when I started in this business 20 years ago, it was very much a rule-driven type of process. We were very cookie cutter in our approach to the supervision of clients. But I'll tell you what, the officers that we're hiring these days are viewed as agents of change. We know that things like social determinants of health, mental health conditions, addictions, lots of folks talked about employment and addiction and criminal mindset and friends. Those are all the things that our officers look at now to provide support systems in our case plans and supervision. And so we've moved away, and we're moving away from a more sort of reactionary criminal justice system to one that I believe inspires more hope, is more optimistic. And I believe that our probation officers are critical in those changes. I can tell you that since our baseline year of 2008 that we started measuring these results, we have seen in any given year anywhere between 30% and 70% reduction in those that are under our supervision going to prison from revocation. Those are real families with, with children, and they're contributing now as tax-paying citizens, working and helping to create a safer community. And I am just so proud of our staff for helping to contribute to those successes. Thank you, Jeff.
Sarah, thank you so much, and all the good work that you do up there in Coconino County. We have, exciting information and have presented some updates from all over Arizona. So next on our agenda, we have education. Actually, we have Ms. Karen Lorson from Adobe Mountain School joining us to talk about the Career Readiness Program and the Department of Juvenile Corrections facility in North Phoenix. And your class, which really makes a difference with our youth. And can you explain a little bit about your program, Karen?
Yes, it's a pleasure to speak with all of you today about our transition program and the resources that are provided to Adobe Mountain. Regina, we can't thank you enough for all you do for our program and our school. Thank you to ASU as well. The ASU team, which consists of James Short, Heather Griller Clark, and Annie Grayson, provide us with a digital curriculum on tablets, which emulates our transition class and all the lessons that we teach to our youth. Arizona at Work, Regina Weiler, and DES provide us access to the community resources, job readiness skills, and access to all local employers. Arizona at Work has provided the community partners who come in and speak to our class regularly. The apprenticeship program is a big part of our program as well. They help the youth understand the industry and the opportunities that they're able to get when they leave Adobe. Chicanos por la Casa helps our youth with resources and getting jobs. Native Health, thank you, with all the provided resources of getting jobs and access to mental and behavioral services upon release. That is amazing for every single one of our youth that leave Adobe here. DS, we all know what you do and the outstanding services that you provide for our youth here too. We can't thank you enough. We're also lucky to have AAA Landscaping, Ben Casaneda, who is one of our employers, who provide the kids with immediate job opportunities in landscaping when they leave. We've had great success with them as well. Our youth at Adobe also have the opportunity to leave with many certifications. A couple of them are done through our class, also through culinary and other programs. Ours are a career readiness credential and retail works, which automatically gets them in the door when upon release of a date. The youth at Adobe exit with a transition portfolio, including contact information, as well as resources to help them in any area. They're given plenty of information, plenty of phone numbers. So if they get stuck out there, they just can pick up the phone or even reach back to Adobe. Thank you to all of you that have helped our youth at Adobe. It makes the success rate that much better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, that is a difficult job, working with our youth. And I have toured that facility at Adobe Mountain and was very impressed, especially in the educational opportunities that exist there. So thank you for joining us today. Recovery and reentry go hand in hand. Peer support for those with substance use disorder improves the provision of services as individuals leave incarceration to reenter the community, which in turn, as we have said many times in this webinar, reduces recidivism, promotes public safety, and recovery. These next few success stories outline successful reentry from the use of peer support and recovery specialists. First up, meet KD with the Arizona Women's Recovery Center.
My name is Kathleen Davis. I'm a peer recovery support specialist. I work for Arizona Women's Recovery Center, and I have a 21-year-old son. His name is JB, and he is in the Navy. So I was actually released from Perryville Women's Prison October 11th, 2019. However, my reentry journey started about 60 days before that, when I was asked if I wanted to join the Second Chance program, which was part of the Paestoa yard in 2019. I, of course, said yes, wanting to open up any door I could and keep any option open. And I actually found a lot of success through that program, and it did open many doors for me that actually led me to where I am right now. First, I had to overcome myself. I had to surrender to something bigger than myself and a why bigger than myself, something to drive me into change. I was able to do that actually while I was incarcerated. And I actually did an inside work. I utilized things that were available in the prison, like NA and AA meetings. Different ministries would come in. I absorbed everything I possibly could. For me, I also journaled and read daily, just wanting to work on changing my thinking. I knew I had to change everything. And actually, the Second Chance program really helped me to move past that defeated mindset. They helped me make a resume. They helped me work with computers. They helped me put my resume on Indeed. They talked to me about my verbiage, and had a lot of speakers and different agencies come in that shared about different options that were out there. For me, it was the peer support option that spoke to me, because I then found out that everything that I had been doing for the past 15 years that I thought was going to destroy me, that lived experience could be used to elevate and help others, and to model what it looks like to walk out of addiction and walk out of the incarcerated mindset, and to actually re-enter society in a new and fresh way, and to actually be handed a life. So there were different community points that came in and spoke in the Second Chance program. In particular, I remember a man named Roy Monroe, who came in with the TIPS program and was sharing about the option for peer support. He was connected to a organization called Cheers, which is actually a day program for SMI. They offered a peer support certification program. When I was in the Second Chance program, he left his card. And when I got out about a month after, I gave him a call and I inquired about the peer support certification. And he did all the background work as far as, getting it set up, getting me enrolled, and telling me when I could start. And I did that. And I did really well. It spoke to my heart. It definitely matched my personality, and gave me a chance to do something where I'm helping others and using what I had been given. I do the possible and God does the impossible. So I did everything I possibly could. Every door that opened to me, I did my part. And for me, I count on a higher power, which I found through the program. And I don't give up either. Even if I've wanted to use, I don't. That's one thing that's really important to know, is that just because you feel something, you don't have to act on it. I connected myself to a community, the 12 steps, and I'm also involved in church and in different fellowships. And I just have found a way not to give up, but to know if this doesn't work, something else will open up, and just simply to do the next right thing in front of you. I trusted something higher than myself to do the other part, and I moved forward with my why. And today my why is, honestly, I genuinely just have a heart to help others. I was lifted out of a pit by people around me, and obviously by doing my part. And I have a heart to be a part of helping others walk out of the fire, carrying the buckets of water to help others and to put out the flames for others. It's really a beautiful thing, and it's really fulfilling. My life's not about me anymore. It's about helping others. And that's where I believe true joy comes from, is actually being a part of other people's lives, not just serving myself. I am strongly considering going into ASU in the social work, to be a social worker. I hadn't considered that before. However, I have been put on a community advisory board with Southwest Interdisciplinary Research. It's an advisory board through ASU where I've been around people that are in the social work community and in the social work education community. And it seems to really just fit my heart. And I just really have that heart to to, like I said, to just help others. That's what makes my life worthy today, is that I'm able to actually be something to somebody else. And I believe that moving forward in that mindset and also in that career field will give me a chance to continue doing that. I thank the people that have put effort into making programs that help those of us who have struggled and made the wrong choices, and to give us second chances, because I know that if anybody would have given up on me, it would have been a waste, because today my life is worthy, and I'm able, like I said, to help others. And really, it's about lifting each other up. Like, we're supposed to lift each other up in community and in life. We're supposed to reach down, not to look down on another, but only to lift another up. And so I'm just really grateful for those who reach their hand down to help me be lifted up.
I think now we'll be moving on to our next video, Reentry by Design.
Today, I'm joined by Brett Matosian. He's the founder of Reentry by Design, that aims to offer support to people who have been incarcerated and are ready to reenter society. Brett, thank you so much for joining this conversation with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
You're surviving the pandemic well, I see. This is good.
I am. Thank you, Brian, and thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. So the name itself, Reentry by Design, there's a little bit implication there that people who have been incarcerated maybe are re-entering not by design. Is that true?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's one of the reasons we started the organization in the first place, was we recognized the need to better prepare people when they were getting ready to re-enter society. Many people weren't being given, a good plan for re-entry. And if they were, it was a plan that started late in the game, maybe 30 to 60 days prior to release. So we saw the need to get inside far before their release date and begin working with them to design a reentry plan that was tailored for the individual, not a boilerplate type of solution.
What are some of those needs that you see in the people that you work with? What are they dealing with, or what are some of the, maybe this is a better way to ask the question, is that I've never been put in that position, in that situation. It's hard for me to imagine what's needed for a person to make that reentry process successful. So what's the hidden world, and what are some of the obstacles that people face?
Well, it's actually pretty challenging, Brian. There's two real components to it. And the first is working with the individual's mindset, because many of them have gotten into the habit of believing that they've had this learned helplessness, that this is their life, that there's nothing better for them. And so one of the first things that we need to do is kind of help them understand that there is hope, that there is a brighter tomorrow, and that we can move them in that direction with the appropriate plan. So one is getting their headspace right. And then on the other side of that is dealing with all the uncertainties, the mechanics of re-entering society after a period of incarceration. Things like, where are you going to live? Where are you going to work? How are you going to get around? Do you have clothes? Do you have shoes? Do you have food? Do you have family that you want to try to get reunified with, but you aren't really sure how to go about doing that? Do you need help with your credit? Do you need so many aspects that are, surround reentry, and all of these represent areas of uncertainty for those that are getting ready to release. And it creates a sense of fear and anxiety, and they don't know what they're going to do when they get out. And so without a proper and crafted plan, then they really do, in some cases, panic when it comes to the actual act of reentering society.
So for most people, we don't roll out of bed and be like, I think I want to help people coming out of prison. This is a vocation, yeah. Right? And the definition of vocation is where our deep happiness and the world's deep hunger meet. So how did you get passionate about this particular issue?
It's a great question. So I should probably start by saying that I once was incarcerated myself. So after making some terrible choices back in 2006 and 2007, I ended up being sentenced to a 5-year Arizona Department of Corrections sentence. I released out in September of 2013. And it was then that I really learned that I wasn't prepared to re-enter society. There were a lot of things that I didn't know how to do. It's not like I had been incarcerated before, or I had been through it before, so I had no idea what to expect. And it really didn't adequately prepare me, in my mind, for re-entry. And so it was at that point that the seed got planted, that I started to realize we need to do something different. We need to start working with people at an earlier stage, much earlier than they were at the time. And in a perfect world, as much as 12 months prior to release, to begin helping design a reentry plan that's tailored to the individual and addresses all of that individual's needs. I kind of liken it to this. I kind of liken it to if you have a car and you're driving down the road and you have 3 perfectly good tires, but 1 really bad tire, that 1 really bad tire is going to cause you to probably have a blowout and you might get into an accident.
Yeah, you're still not going anywhere with 3 good tires.
With 3 perfectly good tires. So my thoughts are that if you address someone's employment issues, their housing issues, and their family reunification issues, but you ignore their substance abuse challenges, then you're probably going to have a blowout. You're probably going to end off in a ditch somewhere down the road, which for these guys or for us is being reincarcerated.
We were chatting before we started filming, and this was kind of mind-blowing to me, is that you said that you were having a lot of fun with this. It's like, I'm not sure where the fun aspect comes in, but then you were talking about new beginnings.
Yeah. So I love people. I really do. And this is really all about people. Granted, we're dealing with individuals who have made some really bad choices like I did, but they're still people and they all have dreams and they all have hope. So the fun part for me is when I get the opportunity to talk with individuals one-on-one and begin to talk about how they got to where they're at, what caused them to go down the path that they went down, and then help them to self-reflect on why that happened, help them to think about where they're at, and help them think about where they want to go. And so the fun part of it is really when you get to that realization that there's a better life ahead for them and that it's attainable and that they can do it, is fun because it's like a light switch going on. That light switch goes on and they become a different transformed person. It's amazing and it's fun.
There's a lot in there for all of us, because there's an awful lot of people in this world that do feel trapped.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be incarcerated to feel that way. So to try to apply some of these lessons to our own lives, for those of us who have never had this experience, that it's never too late to start over.
Well, my name is Tanya Alegria, and I am originally from Los Angeles. I came out to Arizona in 2005 to make changes to my life and to the lives of my children. I struggled with addiction in Los Angeles. Grew up in a household with a single mom and who also struggled with addiction, and experienced a lot of trauma growing up in her house, and left my house when I was 13 years old. And I joined a gang. I had 2 options, and some young people were prostituting and some were joining gangs. And I decided for protection that would be my decision. I also met domestic violence and street violence while I was out there on the streets. I was a homeless teen. By 15, I was a full-fledged addict and just running around the streets of Los Angeles, sleeping under the bridge right there in the LA River. 18 years old, I entered into the county jail system and spent several months at a time throughout my adult life because of the activities that I was engaged with out on the streets. When I was 18, I gave birth to my first son, whose dad was shot and killed, and I was 5.5 months pregnant. At that time, my homelessness still continued, and I had no place to take my son home to. I was in the hospital, and my sister came to see me, and I was crying. And I said, I don't want to take him to my neighborhood because of all the violence that we were experiencing there. I asked my sister for us to go, and she said, I bought you a ticket so that you can come out here. And so with my 4 kids at 1 o'clock in the morning, I jumped on a Greyhound and I headed to Arizona, and I cried as the streets of Los Angeles are passing by, all these memories in my head of who I am And all I know to be is becoming more and more unfamiliar. I just prayed to God. I said, I don't know what's out here that you couldn't give me in Los Angeles, but if you save my kids, then I will spend the rest of my life serving people like me. And so I went to Young and I spent almost 6 years there. That's where my recovery started. I've been in recovery for 16 years. I've been in the field for over 10 years. I was broken down. As a matter of fact, when I left town, one of the older gentlemen there, one of the older cowboys said, Tanya, he said, I want to tell you something. When you came, you looked very broken and the light was out in your eyes. And now you're leaving town and you're headed out to make a change in the world, and you have this bright shining star in your eyes. And it was because of that town. It was because of the people. They embraced me. They filled my cup with hope. They saw things in me that I couldn't see for myself. Those were the best and continue to be the best memories that my kids have there. I learned how to be a mom. I learned how to be a neighbor. My sons went on to serve in the United States Army. I got hungry for life. I didn't even know if I was going to make it. And at times I didn't want to, but I feel like there was a greater plan set before me. And I grew healthy and strong. And I thought there is so much power in the human experience. No matter where you're at, whether you're working in facilities, whether you're working at a school or in a jail, the power of the human experience can change somebody's life for the better. And those people knew nothing about the life that I lived. So I spent some time in Payson. Then I moved to Gilbert, and I just a little over a year ago purchased my own home myself, bought myself a new car. I'm a program manager for an outreach team that serves people struggling with a serious mental illness who are chronically homeless and suffering from addiction. I work to improve the quality of their life with my team and to transition them out of homelessness. I'm currently working on my bachelor's degree and God willing, onto my PhD. I'm just one in an entire almanac or library of stories that are out there that really do need that assistance and that support. And most of all, that faith that they can change, because sometimes you have to see it for other people because they can't see it themselves. So my goals are my own program, and wherever I could share a message about our duty to come to the aid of others, that's what I intend to do. And to keep my promise to God. As I asked him to keep his promise for my kids, I'll serve people until I'm gone.
Boy, you know, Tanya always gets me going. That concludes our program for today. And I want to give a thanks out to also KD and Brett for the good works that you're doing. And Katie, you know, really, you know, pushing forward. You know, somebody who has been through it is most effective in helping those people that are going through it. So those of you that work with these populations, I'm just going to go off script here just for a moment, but I want to show a picture to everyone. That's the picture of me just before being released from Arizona Department of Corrections many, many years ago. And because of your good work, I am a contributing member of society. I am no longer a taxpayer or no longer a tax burden, but I'm a taxpayer. I don't commit crimes. And more importantly, my son has never known his father to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So thank you to everybody that attended today. Keep up your good works because your work really matters. Thank you.